Good morning, friends. Jill here. Welcome to onion harvesting day. It's going to be a really hot day today, which is actually kind of important if you are harvesting onions and intending to store them. And so that is what I am intending to do. And I wanted to take you guys along because I know that when I planted these onions back, months ago, a lot of you guys had asked, are you storing these? What type of onions are there? And just wanted to know the process. And so I thought I would walk you through that. I ordered my onions from Dixondale Farms. I ordered a variety. I think a couple long days. The long days store longer. So there's the long day onions, the short day. So depending on what type of onion you got, the long day or short day, that is going to determine some of your curing methods. So what I'm going to do today is based off of a long day onion, which don't store as long. We live in the South. I'm in zone 7B, and so it's really hard for me to get those year storage onions. So these will probably last me, I'm gonna say 4 months, but we eat a lot of onions, so I don't really think that it's gonna be that big of a deal. I think it'll, last us as long as we need it to last us. So one of the things I think I get asked the most is, how do you know when your onions are ready? And obviously you'll start seeing that they start to bulb up, and you'll be able to actually tell that things are taking place. Usually you'll start to notice that your onions are starting to just flop over. You'll start seeing the lower parts of them just completely die off, like what's happened right here. See how these leaves are browning down here as well, all at the bottom. And then my plant actually just began to flop over. Like, I came out here the other day and this one was laid over, so I went ahead and pushed all of these over. You guys can see here the ones I plan on harvesting. And so you want to wait for at least half of your plant to begin to flop over. That's kind of a good sign that they're ready. But when you do start noticing that, and you're noticing that some of the leaves are falling off on the bottom part of the plant, go ahead and push it over, because then it signals that plant to just put the rest of its energy into maturing that bulb. And so that is what I've done here. You also don't really want to water your onions if you know you're going to be harvesting them soon. So for me, I try to give myself 5 or 6 days. I know you're could probably even go longer. You may even, are supposed to go longer. But when I know, okay, so I knew that this week was kind of my goal for harvesting these onions. So last week I stopped watering them. And by doing that, you're just signaling that onion to finish maturing. It's not, you're not providing it with water, what it needs to just keep growing and developing. I'm kind of just toppling over the top, of these plants. I am no longer watering them and just really telling that plant, hey, finish maturing, finish doing what you're doing so I can harvest you. Another thing too, when I have harvested onions in the past, I've not done this because I didn't know the proper way to harvest onions for storage. And so I've watered them before, harvested them, and then it just retains all that moisture in the plant and they end up rotting, they end up not storing for, longer. Obviously, I don't want that to happen this year, and so these are just some things that I'm doing differently. Now, you can come out into your garden at any stage. Your onion could be small, your onion could be huge. You can immediately just harvest it from your garden, go inside and cook it up and eat it, and that's totally fine. You don't have to do any of this process. This is the process I'm doing because I'm wanting to harvest these and I want them to last for a few months. So the process is a little bit different. So the reason that I chose this glorious day to harvest onions is because it's sunny, and this is a part of the process for me when I am harvesting my onions. We're about to harvest them, and then I'm going to immediately take them over to my hardening off tables, which are, now my harvest tables this time of year, and I'm going to let the roots dry out for a couple days. Now you can obviously leave them outside like I'm doing, just make sure that there's no rain. So if I thought that there was a chance of rain in the forecast, I obviously wouldn't want, to put them outside and leave them outside. That's kind of preventing the whole part of drying them out and curing them. But I am so excited to harvest these. So let's dig some of these up. Right now, I'm just gonna harvest this little row because some of mine, the leaves aren't dying back. Some of mine, over half of the plant hasn't fallen over. So I'm just waiting. And then also when I do see that and I go ahead and topple the top parts of the onions over, I still need to let them set for about a week. And I'm just not there yet on all my other plants. But I wanted to go ahead and do these because some of these things are getting huge and I just wanted to get a head start to the process. All right, let's harvest some of these bad boys. Check that out. That's a good size onion. Smells so good. All right. Oh man, that broke. That's okay. It was flowering. You also want to be careful when you're pulling these up that you don't just pop the whole top of the onions off. I kind of like move my onions back and forth just to make sure that I'm not. Oh, these are. Check that out. This is probably the best onion year I've ever had. Obviously, I'm pretty excited about it. That one came out easy. Now these down here are the ones that I'm super excited about. They are so big. Look at that huge thing. Wow. These are awesome. So I have an onion right here that the top just completely broke off of it. That is fine. You can still technically store those, I believe, but we need onions. So I'm actually gonna take this guy immediately inside and use him. I mean, oh my gosh. So these are the Texas sweet onions primarily. That's what we're using, is a lot of sweet onions. We did plant some white ones and some red ones just for like recipe purposes. But as far as like everyday cooking, with literally every single meal, we saute onions and mushrooms in a cast iron skillet, and that goes with every single vegetable that we make, period. And we eat vegetables with, you know, every dinner meal. And so onions are one of those things that I really want to grow a ton of onions. I would really love to be able to grow, you know, an entire bed when we move of onions. And I'm hoping that if I do like everything by the book that I'm supposed to do on storing these, that they will last longer than just a couple months. I have had onions last me though. I mean, I've just bought the sets at the co-op, so I didn't really pay attention if they were long day or short day, but I have had them that I've grown last like 6+ months. So I'm really gonna try to push the boundaries with these and really figure out how long I can get these to store, just because we're buying so many onions right now. But man, I'm excited. All right, so we're going to grab these, head over to the harvest table, and then lay them out. Man, this makes me so excited. Okay, so I'm gonna actually move my ginger so I have this entire area. I'll just stick my ginger over here. Look, it's starting to sprout and do really well. So I'm just making sure that I'm not leaving these bunched up like this. I really want to just lay them all out. So I'm probably going to leave these out here for today, tomorrow, like 2 days max. hot. You guys can see here, they have got plenty of space, plenty of airflow. I'll leave these out here for a few days. After the roots have had time to dry up, I'm actually gonna move them to like a shady spot. You know, I know Nathan's aunt and uncle, they have all these potatoes and all of these onions that they grow, and they have this huge oak tree on their property, and they actually line up like all around the oak tree, all of these things after they've done these steps. And every time we go over there in the summertime, it's so funny to me because I find this big old oak tree just like loaded full of onions and potatoes. I just think it's the coolest thing ever. But they're doing that next process. I don't have a huge tree like that, so I'm actually going to be moving these after a couple days just onto the back porch. We actually have like string set up last year where we hung our onions after we'd done this stage. That's probably what I'm gonna do again. So once you have moved, good morning. Once you've moved these into that shady spot, wherever it is, you're not gonna like peel off any layers of your onions or anything like that. You're gonna leave it on there, dirt, everything. And really what you're doing is you're just waiting for the top parts of these to fully die off and really just like go into being fully dormant. They could get moldy, they could get some sort of disease, they're not gonna last as long. So that's really what that next stage of the curing process is just for, is just to allow it to continue to go dormant. All right, so this is where I am with this stage of curing the onions. One thing I will note that is really important, because this was something that I failed in the past, is when you move from this stage outside, drying the roots out, to going inside under or wherever, back porch, garage, somewhere that's like got a lot of airflow, that is what's important, is you want to make sure that there's plenty enough ventilation and airflow for your onions. You don't want to, you know, throw them all together. You want to lay them out flat like I've done here. It's just going to ensure that you're going to be able to cure them for longer. All right, so now I just wait. There are a few more steps in this process. So what I think I'm going to do, this is kind of part one of harvesting and the beginning steps of curing. Once we've reached that step 2 marker, I'm probably going to make a second part of this, a quick little video showing you what the next steps look like. But it's so much fun. Onions are one of those things that I love growing personally, because they don't really require a whole lot of work. There's just like this freedom of buying the sets, throwing them in the ground, completely neglecting them. I mean, my onions were under all of that snow we got. I mean, we got so much snow. It was our like record-breaking snowfall year since like way back when. I don't know all the stats, I'm not that type of person. We got a lot of stinking snow, you guys. We had not had that much snow here in a really, really long time. They do so well. They're one of those things that you literally can put into the ground like super early and just kind of forget about. They're really hands-off. I do go around when I start noticing that they're bulbing up, and I'll brush, you know, the dirt off around them to let them continue to bulb bigger. But other than that, I'm super hands-off with my onions, and that's one reason why I love growing them, because they're one of those hands-off crops. Same with the garlic, same with the potatoes. You put the work in on the front end, and it's very minimal work, and then that's it. I'm not starting, you know, the onions from seed. I'm buying the sets. The garlic, I had the clove that I'm, you know, doing. The potatoes, we have the seed potatoes. So they're really easy for me. I think it's because there's that, there's not as many steps involved for me as far as everything else that I'm planting in my garden, right? I've got the tomatoes that I'm starting from seed, and I'm up potting, and I'm transplanting, and there's several steps in that process. With the onions, I bought the sets, I threw them in the ground where they were just these little bitty things, and now they're producing these huge onions. I couldn't be more thrilled. So if you're wanting something really easy, kind of that hands-off approach, I would really encourage you to try growing onions, or even garlic for that matter, or potatoes. You got your whole little, like, everything you need there. And so it's just super easy. I really enjoy it. We cook with it a lot. That's another thing too. I'm growing a lot of the things that we are using in our day-to-day cooking, because that is a reason why we do this, right? Like, we want to grow, we want to grow our own food. We also want to reduce our cost of food that we're buying and sourcing out elsewhere. And that's one thing when Nathan and I had this conversation of, well, you know, what do you want me to plant more of this year? Onions were definitely on his list. That is one of the things that we are excited about on moving to our new place, is we're going to have so much space to just grow onions and garlic that I will be able to grow enough, and even maybe succession plant them, which is kind of my plan. That way I can harvest them at different times, and I will have them to last me for the duration of the fall and the winter until I plant again in the spring. So I hope this video was helpful. I will be doing a second part of this just to kind of show the other steps, you know, after this, because it is kind of a bit of a process if you're wanting to cure your onions and store them properly for long term. But thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. I'll talk to you soon.